Have you ever considered that the world you see around you is not the whole of reality, but rather a tiny bubble floating within it? Each of us lives within our own bubble, a fragile sphere made up of beliefs, perceptions, and ideas about who we are and what life is. These bubbles shape our understanding, defining where we end and others begin. But just as a bubble shows only a small, distorted glimpse of the vastness around it, our perspective only hints at the true reality that lies beyond. In this speech, I invite you to question the boundaries of your bubble, to peer beyond the limits of perception, and to ask what it means to truly see, to truly connect, and to live freely beyond the bubble. This phrase serves as a reminder of the importance of agency, resilience, and self-determination. In life, we're all participants in multiple game systems with rules and expectations, whether that's a job, a relationship, or society at large. Every game has structures and norms dictating the way people interact and progress. Yet in the midst of all these systems, we often forget that we have the power to shape the game rather than be passively shaped by it. Changing the game starts with a mindset. Too often we fall into routines and expectations set by others, slipping into the current without questioning whether it aligns with our true values or aspirations. We play by the rules that were handed to us, adjusting our goals, actions, and even beliefs to fit within the game's boundaries. The result is a life that feels constrained, a life that reflects the pressures and influences of outside forces rather than the unique potential within us. But what if we looked at things differently? What if, instead of just playing along, we realized that we have the power to influence the game itself? Changing the game means refusing to settle for a role or outcome that doesn't feel authentic. It means questioning the why behind each rule, being willing to break away from the usual path, and challenging the norms that keep people locked into unsatisfying patterns. When we choose to change the game, we're actually setting a new standard, not just for ourselves, but for others. This could be as simple as rethinking how we communicate in relationships, deciding to lead with openness instead of guardedness. Or in the workplace, it might mean proposing new ideas, speaking up when something doesn't sit right, or creating a culture of collaboration rather than competition. People who dare to change the game become catalysts for broader shifts, demonstrating what's possible when one refuses to be molded by outside expectations. Of course, changing the game requires courage. There is always pressure to conform, to go along with the status quo, to make yourself fit within the existing structure. Choosing to redefine your role within the game can be met with resistance, skepticism, or even opposition. Yet true strength lies in standing by your values, even when doing so is uncomfortable. Those who change the game are not those who simply rebel for the sake of it, but those who see the need for something better, who believe in a different way forward, and are willing to lead that change. To refuse to let the game change you means not compromising your core values. It's about preserving the essence of who you are, your unique vision, and the principles you hold dear, regardless of external pressures. When we stay true to ourselves, we become active creators rather than passive players. We step into our power, taking responsibility for our role in shaping the world around us. Ultimately, choosing to change the game rather than letting it change you is an act of self-respect and a commitment to growth. It's a choice to be authentic, impactful, and intentional in a world that often seeks to mold us into conformity. So dare to question, innovate, and lead in a way that feels true to you. After all, the most significant changes in history didn't come from people who just played the game, they came from those who dared to change it. Each of us lives within a bubble of perception, a unique sphere shaped by our experiences, beliefs, senses, and thoughts. This bubble is the lens through which we view the world, but it's also a barrier that filters and limits what we perceive. Our minds, interpreting reality through the boundaries of our individual bubbles, can only take in so much, and so much is inevitably left out. We tend to believe that what we see, hear, and feel constitutes the full scope of reality. But is this really the case? What we know and understand is just a fraction of the larger truth. Our perception is a construction, a bubble that both protects us and confines us. Perception is often shaped by past experiences and learned beliefs. From a young age, we're taught how to interpret the world, often absorbing the biases and limitations of those around us. If, for instance, we were raised to see certain people, places or ideas as bad or good. These judgments affect our perception. They form part of our bubble, creating an interpretative filter through which everything else is seen. This is where we start to lose sight of reality. Our bubble reinforces itself, as confirmation bias leads us to see only what aligns with our existing views. In this way, we become enclosed in our own narrative, seeing only partial truths and interpreting them as the whole. But perception is also limited by our physical senses. We can only see a small portion of the light spectrum, hear within a certain range, and feel what our nerve endings report back to us. Our brains fill in the gaps, taking these sensory fragments and forming them into a coherent story. This is helpful for navigating everyday life, but it's also misleading. When we assume that this story is all there is, we risk mistaking our limited perception for the entire truth. The bubble of perception can make the world feel small and predictable when in reality it's complex, nuanced, and often mysterious. But to realize we are in a bubble of perception is to begin breaking free from it. Once we understand that our view is inherently limited, we can approach life with curiosity and openness rather than certainty and judgment. The act of questioning the truth of our perceptions can bring us closer to a broader understanding. When we meet new people, explore different cultures, or challenge our ingrained beliefs, we stretch the walls of our bubble, expanding our awareness beyond familiar boundaries. At the same time, recognizing our bubble is not about escaping it, it's about becoming conscious of it. True freedom lies not in leaving the bubble altogether, but in understanding it from within. By seeing the bubble for what it is, a construct of perception, we empower ourselves to transcend its limitations. We gain the ability to engage with reality on a deeper level, exploring what lies beyond our habitual perspectives. As our awareness expands, we become more connected to the world outside ourselves and more understanding of others' viewpoints, realizing that they too are shaped by their own bubbles. In this way, we find a path toward greater empathy, humility, and wisdom, understanding that our perceptions are just one lens among many. Escaping the illusion of our lives, the stories we tell ourselves, the roles we play, the limits we believe in, is about recognizing that much of what we accept as reality is a construct. We live in a web of beliefs, social norms, and personal assumptions that guide our daily decisions and shape our experiences. We often take these assumptions at face value, rarely questioning the patterns and ideas that rule our lives. Yet many of these beliefs are inherited, formed in early childhood, or absorbed from others without examination. We wear these beliefs like armor, protecting our sense of self, but also trapping us in a familiar but often restrictive view of the world. The illusion begins with the ego, the identity we create to define ourselves. We think of ourselves as fixed, stable, a self with a distinct name, past, and personality. Yet when we look more closely, we find that this self is fluid, changing constantly in response to new experiences, relationships, and thoughts. The identity we cling to is more of a process than a permanent thing. By believing that we are a solid, unchanging self, we allow the illusion of the ego to shape our perceptions and limit our potential. This limited view of the self is like a mask we wear, hiding not only our true essence from others, but also from ourselves. Another part of the illusion is the belief in separation, that we are separate from one another, from nature, and from the world around us. This belief fosters a sense of isolation and competition, causing us to see others as threats or rivals rather than fellow human beings with similar desires, hopes, and fears. In reality, we are deeply interconnected, influenced by everything and everyone around us. Our actions ripple out into the world, shaping others' lives as much as theirs shape ours. But when we live in the illusion of separation, we build walls around ourselves, which keeps us from experiencing the true depth of connection and empathy that life offers. Escaping the illusion doesn't mean rejecting everything we know. It means seeing through the layers we've constructed and recognizing them as transient. The way to begin this journey is by cultivating awareness, questioning our automatic thoughts and reactions, and observing ourselves without judgment. Meditation, self-reflection, and conscious inquiry allow us to observe the flow of our thoughts and see the stories we tell ourselves. Through this process, we learn to recognize when we're acting from conditioned beliefs or patterns rather than authentic self-understanding. As we see through these layers, the illusion begins to lose its hold on us. we realize that many of the things we once considered fixed truths are actually flexible interpretations. Our beliefs about success, love, happiness, and identity can shift and evolve. This openness brings a sense of freedom, allowing us to engage with life more fully and without fear. When we no longer see ourselves as bound by societal roles or personal expectations, we gain the courage to live from a place of inner truth, rather than external validation. Escaping the illusion is ultimately about letting go of the need for certainty and embracing the unknown. It's about allowing life to unfold with a sense of curiosity, seeing each moment as a new opportunity to connect with what is real, rather than what we've been taught to believe. In doing so, we don't leave reality, we arrive more fully into it, embracing life as it truly is, beyond the illusions we create. The self we believe ourselves to be a constant, defined entity is largely an illusion. We carry around a sense of I as if it's fixed and permanent, a center from which all our experiences stem. We spend much of our lives building and protecting this identity, shaping it through memories, preferences, and roles. But when we look more closely, the notion of a single, unchanging self doesn't hold up. Who we are is not static, but is instead an ever-shifting collection of experiences, thoughts, and perceptions. The self, in reality, is fluid, a dynamic process rather than a stable thing. From childhood, we learn to label ourselves with names, personality traits, and beliefs. These labels are reinforced by our families, cultures, and society, which encourage us to create a story of who we are. This story gives us a sense of identity and purpose, a sense of being someone specific and unique. But the more we identify with this story, the more rigid our self-concept becomes. We start to see ourselves as defined by our past actions, our successes, our failures, and even the opinions of others. We hold on tightly to this constructed self, convinced it's who we truly are. But in doing so, we overlook the deeper reality that identity is something we continually create rather than something we inherently are. This illusory self can become a trap. When we believe we are a fixed someone, we limit ourselves to familiar roles and behaviors. If we see ourselves as shy, successful, or unworthy, we act accordingly, reinforcing these ideas and preventing growth. We react to situations based on these perceived roles, interpreting each experience in ways that support our existing self-image. This cycle becomes self-fulfilling, narrowing our vision of what we're capable of and holding us back from experiencing life with a true sense of freedom. The truth is that our self is more like a stream than a solid object. Our thoughts, feelings, and even personalities change over time, shaped by experiences and new perspectives. Who we were at 5 years old is vastly different from who we are as adults, yet we persist in clinging to the idea of an enduring self. If we pause to observe ourselves in the present moment, whether through meditation, reflection, or simply paying close attention, we'll notice that there is no fixed I to find. There are only passing thoughts, sensations, and emotions, each one fleeting and replaced by the next. This realization can be unsettling, yet it's also liberating. It frees us from the need to be a particular way or to live up to a rigid self-concept. Letting go of the illusory self doesn't mean we lose our sense of individuality, rather, it allows us to experience life more openly. When we see ourselves as a process rather than a fixed entity, we can engage with life more fluidly, responding to each moment authentically rather than through a mask of who we think we should be. We become open to change, willing to explore new ways of being without the constraints of past definitions. In doing so, we connect more deeply with others, realizing that they, too, are not fixed identities but evolving individuals. Ultimately, the illusory self is a useful tool, but a limiting one. Recognizing its illusory nature gives us the freedom to redefine ourselves in every moment, to live with a sense of curiosity and openness rather than clinging to a predetermined identity. When we let go of the illusion of a fixed self, we can approach life with greater compassion, creativity, and a willingness to grow, realizing that life's richness lies not in being a someone, but in simply being. The fear of vulnerability is a deeply ingrained part of the human experience. From a young age, we learn to shield ourselves, to build emotional armor that protects us from the uncertainty and pain of being exposed. Vulnerability feels dangerous because it involves opening up, revealing our inner selves, and showing parts of ourselves that are often hidden. When we let down our guard, we expose not only our strengths but also our weaknesses, fears, and insecurities. It's this exposure that makes vulnerability feel risky. We fear rejection, judgment, or hurt, so we instinctively avoid situations where we might feel exposed. Yet vulnerability is essential to meaningful connection and growth. Without allowing ourselves to be vulnerable, we cannot form deep relationships or experience the full range of human emotions. In our attempts to protect ourselves, we often isolate ourselves, distancing from others and creating a barrier that blocks genuine intimacy. We may feel safer, but we also feel disconnected, longing for the closeness that only vulnerability can bring. To truly connect, we must allow others to see us as we are, without the masks we habitually wear. This honesty, though uncomfortable, is what allows trust and empathy to grow. This fear of vulnerability is also tied to our desire for control. We want to control how others see us, to shape perceptions, and to avoid situations that might make us look weak or uncertain. In striving to control these things, we limit ourselves, staying within a narrow range of expression and interaction. We hesitate to share our dreams, our insecurities, or our doubts, because to do so would mean surrendering some of that control. But real strength isn't about appearing invulnerable, it's about being authentic, even when that means showing our imperfections. True confidence comes not from maintaining a facade, but from embracing who we really are, flaws and all. When we choose to avoid vulnerability, we miss out on important life experiences. By hiding parts of ourselves, we diminish our ability to experience true joy, love, and fulfillment. Vulnerability requires courage because it involves stepping into the unknown and letting go of the need for constant reassurance or approval. It means taking emotional risks, knowing that we might face rejection or hurt, yet understanding that the potential for connection and growth is worth the discomfort. In facing this fear, we come to understand that vulnerability is not a weakness, but a pathway to a fuller, more authentic life. Learning to embrace vulnerability is a gradual process. It begins with small acts of openness, sharing a personal story, expressing an emotion, or admitting a mistake. Each time we practice vulnerability, we expand our capacity for resilience and empathy. As we become more comfortable with being vulnerable, we discover that people respond with compassion, understanding, and often reciprocal openness. This positive reinforcement helps us to shed the armor that we've worn for so long, realizing that vulnerability does not repel others, it brings them closer. In letting go of the fear of vulnerability, we step into a new way of being. We begin to experience life more fully, unburdened by the constant need to protect ourselves. Vulnerability allows us to access parts of ourselves we might otherwise keep hidden, unlocking creativity, passion, and a sense of freedom. It invites us to live more boldly, to take risks, and to pursue connections that are real and profound. The fear of vulnerability may never disappear completely, but by facing it, we can transform it into a source of strength, allowing us to live with an open heart and a spirit unafraid of life's uncertainties. In embracing vulnerability, we embrace our true selves, discovering that beneath the layers of armor, we are already enough. The world beyond our personal bubbles is vast, intricate, and filled with perspectives and experiences far beyond what we know. Each of us lives within a mental bubble formed by our beliefs, cultural conditioning, memories, and assumptions about the world. This bubble shapes the way we perceive reality, influencing what we focus on and what we ignore. While it provides a sense of security and predictability, it also limits us, filtering out much of what lies beyond our immediate experience. The world outside our bubble is not only different from what we know, it is often more complex, challenging, and awe-inspiring than we can imagine. Stepping beyond this bubble requires an openness to new experiences, an acceptance that our perceptions are inherently limited, and a curiosity to explore what lies outside our comfort zones. Many of us resist doing this, fearing that venturing beyond our bubble will disrupt the sense of self and certainty we've built. The beliefs and ideas within our bubble feel safe, familiar, and reinforcing. We tend to associate primarily with people who share similar views, consume media that aligns with our beliefs, and avoid situations that might challenge our understanding. This can create an echo chamber, a space where our perceptions are continuously reinforced but rarely expanded. However, there is immense value in exploring the world beyond the bubble. When we challenge ourselves to engage with new perspectives, cultures, and ideas, we gain insights that deepen our understanding and empathy. Conversations with people who think differently, travel to places outside our familiar environment, or exposure to new philosophies can help us break down the walls of our bubble. Each new experience or perspective introduces us to another layer of the human experience, showing us just how diverse and interconnected life truly is. These encounters often reveal biases and blind spots we didn't know we had, inviting us to grow and evolve in ways that are profoundly rewarding. By stepping beyond our bubbles, we also become more adaptable. Life is unpredictable. And rigid beliefs can leave us feeling disoriented or fearful when reality doesn't match our expectations. Engaging with the world beyond our bubble teaches us resilience, openness, and flexibility. We learn to embrace uncertainty, realizing that we don't need to have all the answers to find meaning and connection. This adaptability not only helps us navigate change, but also encourages a deeper, more fluid sense of identity. Instead of clinging to a fixed self-image, we become open to discovering new aspects of ourselves, often finding that we're more capable and complex than we originally thought. The world beyond our bubble also enriches our sense of wonder. When we limit ourselves to what we know, life can start to feel predictable and mundane. Yet, stepping outside our comfort zone reveals the richness of the unknown. The mysteries of nature, the beauty of diverse cultures, and the insights from different philosophies remind us that there is always more to explore, more to understand. This sense of wonder keeps us humble, reminding us that no single person or belief system has a monopoly on truth. To explore beyond our bubble is not to reject our personal experiences, but to put them into a larger context. We start to see ourselves as part of a greater whole, interconnected with people, places, and ideas that are both familiar and unfamiliar. This shift in perspective fosters empathy and compassion, allowing us to see the common humanity that underlies our differences. We realize that our individual bubble is just one of many, each as valid and complex as our own. By embracing this diversity, we become more capable of navigating a world that is always changing, finding strength not in rigid certainty, but in the ability to continuously learn and grow. In discovering the world beyond the bubble, we invite a richer, fuller experience of life, one that honors both our unique perspective and the vastness of everything we have yet to encounter. The bubble gives us a starting point, but true fulfillment comes when we reach beyond it, embracing the endless journey of exploration, connection, and understanding.